Well, from sending 100,000 troops to Ukraine to pushing us into a war with Iran, are the neocons and the deep state trying to undermine President Trump from him achieving peace in Ukraine and the Middle East? Well, it sure seems that way. Overnight, warmonger and war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu is very unpopular in Israel, despite what the media is telling you, by the way. He sent a thank you video to Trump for allowing 2,000-pound bombs to flow into Israel. Watch.
Thank you, President Trump, for keeping your promise to give Israel the tools it needs to defend itself, to confront our common enemies, and to secure a future of peace and prosperity.
Peace through bombs. I love it. Peace through bombs, right? So I just want you to think about why you would send a video message like that, okay? Just go to the 30,000-foot level here, okay? Trump didn't seem to be happy with Netanyahu's video message, and he posted on Truth Social that these bombs were already paid for by Israel under President Biden, meaning like I had nothing to do with this transaction. In other words, I didn't really have anything to do with it, so this video message is odd. I think it's odd. I'll ask you guys what you guys think about it, but my impression is that if like you were thankful to President Trump, you would just send him a private message through diplomatic channels, right? You would just say, hey, thanks for allowing that to happen. But instead,
you dog whistle
and you virtue signal.
Trump loves dropping bombs for Israel.
What you're basically saying is, President Trump, I know how much you love Israel's security and us having 2,000-pound bombs. I'm going to publish this video to kind of let the world see that you and I are like simpatico on the same page. Like that's the sense I get with this video release. It's very, very strange.
It also sets it up for him to be ridiculed for being anti-Semite or whatever if he like rebuts it and says, no, I didn't do that. So now it's kind of like he's publicly in support of Israel now.
Well, it's like when people leak that they are going to be put up for a cabinet position, like inside of the Trump administration or something like that. You know, there was all these like rumors floating around about different people being put up and they sort of trial balloon float them out there in the press. So you're putting this out there publicly for a reason, a reason. He's, wildly disliked at home, Netanyahu is, by a mass number of individuals. So why do this? So I have it on good authority that Trump is not a fan of Netanyahu and at all. Now, you'll recall in December, Trump admitted in an AP interview that he said, quote, I don't think Netanyahu ever wanted to make a deal. I thought the Palestinians were impossible and that the Israelis would do anything to make a peace deal. I found that not to be true, Trump said, end quote. So Trump admitting that Netanyahu was essentially lying to him. Then Trump posted a video of Jeffrey Sachs calling Netanyahu a deep state, a deep, dark son of a bitch. And Trump didn't invite him to the inauguration. No invitation. Yet he did invite Javier Milei from Argentina, Giorgia Meloni, and others.
Well, the Israeli government says it's because Netanyahu had prostate procedures. That's why he didn't go. And that he had otherwise planned to.
Okay.
So who's saving face here or other body parts?
So last night, Tucker Carlson did one of the most fascinating interviews that I've watched in a long time with Kurt Mills. Kurt Mills is the executive director of the American Conservative and a foreign policy expert. He talked openly about how Israel uses media proxies to smear Americans who challenge Israel. And he laid out exactly how they do it using the press. And he walked through step by step. I encourage you all to watch it. But he also pointed out how the Trump-Netanyahu relationship is one of the greatest mysteries right now to journalists. Does Trump hate Bibi or does he like him? Watch.
I think realistic expectations would be we get some of what we want. We don't get everything we want because we're not in charge of the United States.
But there's a tension here. I mean, first, the relationship between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel is extremely unclear. Yes. I don't think maybe only the two of them know. They have disagreed since at least 2020 over the election, but they probably disagreed beforehand over strikes in Iran. The last time you and I spoke publicly was over the Soleimani strike in January of 2020. And there were, since then, reporting in the last 5 years has come out that the two of them disagreed over that. Trump felt that the Israelis didn't do their part, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So for years, for at least half a decade, the well has been poisoned between Trump and Netanyahu. Doesn't mean the relationship is done, but there's been an atmosphere of mistrust. And
well, he's had that. I've watched closely and interviewed him more than once, and for
Netanyahu.
Moving on 30 years, because he's been in and out of office, and he's had complicated relations with every president.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing to understand for your listeners, anyone who's not turning this off because we're getting into the depths of Israeli politics here, but Netanyahu's situation is unstable.
Yes.
A supermajority of Israelis want him out. They want him to resign. He does not want to resign because if he resigns, he may go to prison.
Right.
And also, he's been a power achiever for 30 years. And
yes.
I've noticed that people who do that often don't like to quit.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Okay. So he doesn't want to quit for both reasons of his freedom and the way of his life.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So
pretty recognizable syndrome, I would say.
Yes.
Not confined to Bibi.
It's international.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat says this seems like CNN. What in the world?
What, Tucker's interview seems like CNN?
What world? CNN are you watching on Bizarro World where they tell the truth?
What world? Yeah, what CNN are you watching where Tucker Carlson is basically exposing the deep state like neocons who are literally involved in all of this, like
who are trying to provoke us into a war for Israel, like we already did after 9/11 in Iraq.
Iran, pushing us towards Iran.
Has CNN apologized for being pro-Iraq war? When did that happen?
No, they made their money off of it.
They orchestrated that war.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I missed it. Sorry.
Meanwhile, now that Trump and Putin appear to be closing in on a peace agreement, neocons and warmongers are planning to deploy at least 100,000 NATO soldiers into Ukraine. Now, this plan, according to The Telegraph, has been in the works secretly for the past few months. Here's the Newsweek take on it. Ukraine's NATO allies in secret talks to deploy peacekeepers, according to a report. Now, you'll recall we covered here on the show last summer how NATO says that over 300,000 troops were now on high readiness and ready to be deployed. Then they even released a whole video saying it was upwards of 500,000 troops that are ready to go if needed across Europe and into Ukraine. So as many as 300,000. First of all, that was something that's a number that Putin would never allow that to happen. 300,000 NATO soldiers on Russia's border. Sorry, not going to happen. And this is all we're hearing these reports at the exact same moment that Putin and Trump are ready to align on a peace agreement. It's interesting timing, isn't it? When you have these warmongers in Washington, D.C. and a part of Europe and in Europe and NATO who are pushing to now send hundreds of thousands of peacekeepers into Ukraine. Peacekeepers. Zelensky, of course, appears to be in on this as well, the NATO plan. He keeps letting the cat out of the bag. Maybe he's he's too coked up to keep this a secret. So in an interview, Zelensky is insisting not just on large peacekeeping forces, but a very large peacekeeping force. He says that Ukraine, quote, needs contingents with a very strong number of soldiers when he spoke at Davos, and that number from all Europeans, 200,000, is a minimum. A minimum. He says, otherwise, it's nothing. We need 200,000 and minimum. And then he later clarified that he wasn't just fixed to that 200,000 number, but he basically says 200,000 is like, it could be more, it could be less. But if we reduce my army or the army by 200,000, 300,000, 500,000, this will mean that we need other troops instead. So needs NATO forces.
Let's remind ourselves that is approximately the number of people that he has lost of his own people.
Yeah, but 800,000 have been killed now in Ukraine.
I mean, official numbers are somewhere between 200,000 and 500,000. So what he's saying is that my army's crap. I've lost them all. They died because we don't have real leadership and we failed negotiation at peace. So they all died. So you step in and die next. Europeans, let's go.
MVC in our chat says, yeah, we need more meat for the meat grinder. It's disgusting. Yeah, exactly. So are you going to use NATO forces, Europeans and Americans? Go ahead, Philip.
What is this? Zelensky insists that NATO build up these troops. Like that's That's like me like insisting what you guys have for dinner tonight. It's not my meal. It's not my problem. Like, how does that work? Like you can. Well, he's not part of NATO.
But that's what narcissists do.
Yeah, and Trump called him out last week, or over the, I think it was Thursday night. He called him out and said, Zelensky's no angel at all. And this war likely wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Zelensky. So there's no love lost there. The writing is on the wall. So the warmongers seem, and the neocons seem to be really aligning with NATO and Zelensky. And they're really trying to separate themselves and it seems to me, to drive a wedge between Trump and this peace agreement.
Zelensky, by the way, was the premise of Trump's impeachment. How does he think that he can curry favor with Trump when the phone call with Zelensky is what got him impeached 1 of 2 times? And then now he thinks he can make demands of Trump? Again, typical behavior of a narcissist who was fed his ego by Vogue, by the Wall Street Journal, by the New York Times. So he thinks this because he's delusional. And the media has created this monster.
Heidi in our chat says, redacted, yeah, like Trudeau would send Canadians to the front line as well. Right, exactly. So Trudeau is all... So again, you can see where the warmongers and the war machine is aligning itself right now. And so, of course, NATO calls them peacekeepers, but you're not an idiot if you watch this show. NATO has a long history of peacekeeping.
That's also what they're called in the Hunger Games.
It's just another name.
Worth noting.
Yeah, it's just another name for the word terrorism. Take Operation Gladio, for instance. How many of you know about Operation Gladio? How many of you guys are familiar with that? I'll summarize it for you. So basically, Operation Gladio was a plan by the CIA and MI6 to use secret NATO armies to create false flag attacks all over Western Europe. And they then could blame the Soviet Union for these false flag attacks. And that would, of course, then, so basically, yes, launch terror attacks against your own people. Kill your own people so that people are rallied around this idea of going to war against the Soviet Union. It's well documented, by the way. I'll tell you in a second. So if that sounds familiar, the idea of using something called strategy of tension, that's what it's called, strategy of tension. And it was used to keep you and I in a state of tension about Russia. Do you remember the 1980s? Weren't we like in a tension all of the 1980s? And manipulate public opinion, justify stricter security measures, take away your civil liberties, your freedoms because of bad Russia, bad Soviet Union. So you need to give up your liberties, your civil liberties because of Russia? Okay, so that's what these NATO secret terror armies were doing for years under Operation Gladio. And other neocon political processes and policies were put in place as a result of it. So the neocons win when you're scared. Don't be scared. We shouldn't be at war. We should be at peace. We are an anti-war show. Anyway, this book is great, by the way, NATO's Secret Armies by Daniel Genzer. I highly recommend you pick it up. It details in great detail all about Operation Gladio and the terrorism in Western Europe under NATO's secret armies. If you want to educate yourself more on this, of course, the Western media won't tell you about it. NATO is supposed to be this great patriotic organization, a defensive organization, which is just a load of horseshit, of course. They're not a defensive organization at all. It really lays out how the CIA and MI6 after World War II and all of these countries in Western Europe, launched right-wing terrorism, essentially. And here's how Politico put it last week. With the United States President Donald Trump promising to end the war in Ukraine fast, even if it means ceding territory to Russia, Europe is scrambling to figure out what role it will play beyond upping its defense spending and supplying weapons to Kiev. One of the models being discussed is deploying a Europe-led peacekeeping outfit to enforce any potential ceasefire. Talks about European peacekeepers have started in earnest, but no one has figured out how to move the conversation forward. By the way, Russia knew about this plan months ago. As we reported here on the show, their intelligence had told them that NATO was already planning this whole 100,000 troop invasion of Ukraine. Watch.
Given the obvious lack of prospects for a strategic defeat of Russia on the battlefield, NATO is increasingly inclined toward the need to freeze the Ukraine conflict. The West sees the implementation of such a scenario as an opportunity to restore the Ukrainian armed forces' combat capability and thoroughly prepare Kyiv for a retaliation attempt. In order to accomplish these tasks, the West will be required to actually occupy Ukraine. Obviously, this will be done under the guise of deploying a peacekeeping force in the country.
According to the SVR, NATO is increasingly looking to freeze the conflict to give themselves enough time to rebuild Ukraine's shattered military and prepare it for revenge.
Okay.
That's exactly what the plan is. Of course, neocons.
Cosmos in the chat says NATO defended Yugoslavia to pieces. Ask them how that went. Is that a template you want to follow?
A defensive organization is NATO, right? Of course, neocons and warmongers in D.C. paint this as a benefit to American businesses. Like, you should be on board. This is how neocons always pitch it to you. You guys should be on board with this because this is going to help Americans. Like, here's Colorado warmonger Jason Crow. Listen.
About how this bill is structured and how it provides that support. It provides that support by spending over half of the money right here in the United States to U.S. businesses and U.S. workers from places like Texas and North Carolina and Pennsylvania and Colorado, all throughout this nation, who will be building the equipment and supplies that we'll be sending to our military, because that's another important part of this. Our military sends our old equipment to Ukraine, and Ukraine uses it with great effect.
Okay. Or British intelligence operatives, aka propagandists, who are working in Ukraine, saying now is the perfect time to launch a massive counterattack against Russia. NATO forces would help that cause, of course, tremendously. Russia is running out of weapons right now, according to these British intelligence sources. Where have we heard this before? Listen.
The little man in Moscow has talked about NATO troops in Ukraine. And NATO joining Ukraine being one of the reasons for them invading. I mean, he's come up with many reasons for invading as we know, but that's one of the main ones for him. This would be an ideal time to counterattack if available forces are put into the right place, of course. It doesn't take anyone with half a brain, I think I just about qualify for that, to know when the right time is to counterattack, militarily speaking, of course. And when the enemy is running out of resources, then that's the time to strike. I'm sure there's some people here planning that now.
Yeah, they are planning that right now. So, Ukraine is out of forces. You need right now to launch a counterattack against Russia because they're running out of weapons and munitions. So now would be the time for Ukraine to receive hundreds of thousands of NATO troops. And by the way, I should point out that all you need to do is jump on Telegram to see families who are sharing the fact that their NATO son has been killed in Ukraine. There's lists. I think the numbers are now over 60,000, but we don't hear about it in the West at all. NATO forces, NATO men who are fighting for NATO on behalf of NATO in Ukraine who have been killed. Now, those aren't official numbers, but all Ukrainian, Telegram channels are filled with families sharing the death of their son who fought in Ukraine on behalf of France, the British government. But we don't hear those numbers at all. And we've reported here on this show that we know that Americans have been killed inside of Ukraine. And what are those families being told? What NDAs are they forced to sign in order to receive like pension and benefits, military benefits, after their son was killed in Ukraine fighting against Russia? But you won't hear about it because they've had to sign gag orders and NDAs. So we'll continue to follow this as these neocons continue to try to undermine peace agreements in the Middle East and Ukraine.
Well, what they're doing when they sell this to you, that, hey, you can get a job making bombs and then it's good for our economy, is called the broken window fallacy. That was debunked by classical economist Frederick Bastiat. And it's the idea that if someone breaks a window, then someone in your town gets to replace it and make money. But then your economy can never grow from non-artificial,
like fake breakery.
Right, exactly.
Like fake.
And so it actually is, it's never really good for an economy to go around breaking windows in your town just so that you can boost the economy, rebuilding your own town, because you can never do anything else.
Well, as Kurt Mills pointed out last night in that interview with Tucker, again, I highly recommend you guys go and watch that interview. And it's really fascinating. But he basically says the same thing. We cannot secure our southern border and protect our homeland in the United States if we go to war with Iran.
Right.
If we go to war with Russia, it's game over for the United States.
And
we will not be able to lower grocery prices, secure our border, round up illegal immigrants in the United States. All of our resources and troops will be tapped for that other war against Iran.
Anyhow, okay. I was going to launch into a tangent about economics, and I'm going to refrain myself. This is me.
It'll be a 4-hour show.
Refraining myself. Okay. Well, the rebranding of Bill Gates is happening right before our eyes, and I hope you are paying attention. In a new interview, Bill Gates is now saying that, autism, it's not really a real thing. He believes that you should vaccinate pretty much everything, but autism, it's like mission creep, diagnostic creep. Why do you think Bill Gates would be motivated to play down the increasing prevalence of autism? Do you think? Could it be because he does not want to be asked about its links to vaccines? I'm saying links. Do you think that it's because RFK Jr. is about to take power and show us some very uncomfortable data that he wants to pre-bunk? Do you think that? I'm just putting it out there. Okay. So also, and he accidentally spent some time with Epstein, which may be some kind of pre-bunking of like, I have autism. I didn't know that I couldn't touch girls.
I'm autistic, so I didn't know that I shouldn't hang out with Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay, so watch how they start this piece, the Wall Street Journal, with him downplaying autism as a diagnosis and putting in air quotes like, Clayton has anxiety, or he's hungry, or agoraphobic. Watch. Okay, he didn't invent Windows, he shrink wrapped it. But okay, let's let that one go because the Wall Street Journal seems to be doing a huge public relations campaign for him. What he's saying here is that the definition of autism has expanded. Does that mean that kids who have it do not? Do you see what he's doing here? Could this be because we may eventually learn something when RFK Jr. shows us some real data about autism? Even the CDC reports that rates of autism, look at this chart, just since 2000 have skyrocketed. So when the media, though, tells you that the link between vaccines and autism is disproven, they're citing very flawed studies. This is the book you want to read about this. This book is hard to find. They have doppelganger books because they want you to read books other than this. But this is the one. It's called Turtles All the Way Down with a foreword by Mary Holland. I'm telling you, they don't give you the real story about vaccines, full stop. So given that, is it possible that this awkwardness and, social awkwardness is also pre-bunking a pass for his link to Epstein? The Wall Street Journal lets him explain this by setting him up with a leading question. Why were you with Epstein so often? After he was convicted of prostituting minors, she says, were you played? She gives him a set spike. Not even, can you explain this? Because many times the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has had to clarify lies that he told about his relationship with Epstein. She lets him off. She says, do you think you were played? Watch this.
Well, that's fine. So it's just a little mistake.
Are you now more choosy about your friends?
Just a little mistake that you hung out with Epstein.
Let's just clarify this for the peanut gallery. Epstein was convicted of trafficking minors, prostituting minors in 2008. We now know that Bill Gates spent a lot of time with him after that. So it's not just a lapse in judgment. This person was convicted of prosecuting minors and then, oops, I spent a lot of time with him. And that story continues to move. But the journalist is like, you should be more choosy about your friends, right? Because you were trapped, right? And he is like, yeah, thank you so much. This is revolting. Single Malt in the chat says is revolting, and you're right.
Sammy in our chat calls her a prostitute. Yeah, that's the modern press. These are all, again, when you're at the Wall Street Journal or you're at the New York Times or you're at the Washington Post, you are an extension of the Pentagon or the deep state. So you are just mouthpieces for the intelligence community when you work for these big publications.
Yeah, this is not okay. This is not how journalism is. Like, oh, but your story changed a lot of times and he trafficked minors in prostitution. So that's weird, right? Nope. She's like, you should do better next time. You should not be seen with these people. You should keep it, right? Just like they let him admit he's been accused of murder And then they just leave it right there. This is fine. What? She doesn't follow up. He says they think that I made a lot of money on vaccines and children were harmed. No follow-up questions.
So she has on.
No curiosity. So Clayton, let's play this out. Yeah, I met this person. They thought I murdered a bunch of kids. That's good. What should we have for dinner?
Yeah, so how do you like living here in the desert? Seems like you really get out and get to stretch your legs a lot.
Are there bodies out here? Why are we here again?
You created Windows, and that must be amazing. Can you tell me more about Windows?
Yeah.
And how about Clippy?
Questions.
How about Clippy? Can you tell me more about Clippy?
Don't you think she should follow up on that? People they say that I made a ton of money and that children were harmed by some of my vaccine programs. Cool. Moving on. You're the reporter. You got to look into this. They are very incurious. Incidentally, they're very curious about RFK Jr. This is the same weekend that they published a hit piece on RFK Jr. And it's worth noting that the press is very curious to seek out sex scandals for RFK Jr. and have ostrich syndrome for Bill Gates. Okay. They also present Gates as the more dignified Elon Musk. He says, well, I don't malign European leaders. I guess Elon Musk has a lot of time for that. That's interesting. And then she admits that he is an unelected globalist. Watch. Why would he be an expert on how to handle Donald Trump as if he's handleable?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, like he's really got him in the corner, like painted him in a corner. Also, I'm pretty sure that whatever he is discussing with Macron and von der Leyen, I'm against. Who asked him to do this? He's not a doctor. Why do these people defer to him on global health?
And he's unelected.
Which she's like, you're not elected, but you have all this influence. So tell me how you wield it. As if that's okay, but they take the piss out of Elon Musk for having influence. They're fine with one, but not the other. Why? And then finally, he said he had a 3-hour conversation with President Trump. They're both super excited. He says Trump was so amenable to my ideas about curing AIDS since Trump was able to fast track the COVID vaccine. He says that this is really important because there is a strong chance of another pandemic coming in the next 4 years, and we're not ready for it because we're too busy figuring out what we did wrong. Looking backwards, we're like basically going to turn into a pillar of salt because we're relitigating the COVID pandemic. All right. So we're too busy going over our mistakes from the past pandemic. So we're not going to be ready for the next one, he says. So let me know what you think of this absolute wet kiss from the Wall Street Journal. Lack of journalistic integrity, no journalistic curiosity. I agree with many in the chat that this is infuriating. Why do they allow it? Why does his influence and philanthropy give him this pass for the media? Why? Why, Clayton? Why?
Do you ever have a feeling you're being surveilled and hesitate to share things of interest via text message or email with your friends and loved ones? Well, recently, outspoken parents at a PTA meeting in Catholic Americans have been labeled as domestic terrorists by the FBI. These types of labels can be used to allow the U.S. government to surveil its own citizens and others who live abroad without any legal due process. Fortunately, the founders of Bunker have created an app to uphold people's rights. Bunker is not beholden to any third-party corporation, investor, or government. Bunker deeply believes that privacy is a human right and that everyone on Earth deserves bank-level security. Bunker provides you protection from state and corporate surveillance, as well as cyber criminals. It includes a completely secure and private messenger, a robust password manager, secure cloud storage, and files for your documents. Bunker is built to uphold the rights of people and protect them from cyber crimes. Download Bunker from the App Store or the Google Play Store today. Use the offer code REDACTED to receive your first year for free.
Liberals are freaking out that Trump is firing all the black women under the guise of DEI programs. By accusing them of racist, I would like to assert that they are. By accusing Donald Trump of being racist, I would like to show you that they are being racist. They are falsely indicating that all black women can do is lecture other people about race and have no other intrinsic value, and that black people cannot get a job if it is not from the government or a government handout. Guess what, you guys? That's racist. To say that these people have no other way towards social mobility except through government handouts and government jobs, and they have no other talent. other than race grifting? Yeah, that's racist. Here are some of these headlines. Trump goes after black federal employees by pulling this shocking move. Here's somebody, Fly Sister, saying this is a reminder that black people disproportionately have government jobs. So now that he's firing federal workers, don't act like you didn't know that. So let's tackle this manufactured outrage with some facts, shall we? What Trump did was to end the practice of DEI in the federal government with this executive action. Here is one person saying she had a whole presentation prepped on government environmental justice, and now she can't give it. I'm sure that the people who were scheduled to go to it are just gutted.
Wouldn't you love to go to that night? Hey,
well,
honey,
watch
you know
her
what?
describe it.
Okay, so today I was supposed to be leading a training about environmental justice for a national agency, but it was canceled an hour before it started. Why? Well, because the new federal guidelines from the Trump administration ban not only DEI trainings, but also any trainings or programs about environmental justice. And they're not stopping there. These policies go further, rolling back protections for our water, land, opening the floodgates to drilling, silencing those that are fighting for justice in any form. And to make matters worse, they're demanding a list of contractors like me who provide DEI and environmental justice trainings. And to be honest, it's terrifying.
Okay.
Sure, Hollywood would hire you.
Maybe. Are you really sad would you be sad if that was canceled? You don't have to go to that anymore.
Like if you were like, honey, tonight at 7:00 after the kids get home from school, you and I are going to a environmental justice warrior training led by this woman.
Yeah.
And but I'm sad to report that it's just been canceled.
Right.
Oh.
I wonder how many people were sad about that. Also, there's nothing against her doing that. She's saying they are stopping people from advocacy. That's not true. She can advocate all she wants. She can present this presentation to private companies if she wants. She just cannot get paid by the federal government to do it. If she believes it so much, she should sell it to a private company, go do some contracting work for, I don't know.
Bud Light?
Yeah, L'Oreal, whatever. Yeah. Do it if you want.
Anheuser-Busch, maybe want to hire her?
You can put your lecture online if you believe it so much, and then everybody can decide whether or not they learn from it, or if it's really terrifying that we have canceled it.
David, you could hire her. She could come over to your house and present it to you.
Yeah, about environmental justice.
I'm all set in that area. I mean, I give presentations like that every weekend. So
right,
yeah,
that's what you do on the side.
I would probably go and listen to a lecture on something like that, just because I'm weird. I like different things, but that sounds so freaking corporate. Like it makes my skin crawl thinking about having to sit in like a corporate, like I've been through some of those trainings, and
let me choose.
It's awful.
Sure.
It's the worst.
Oh, it's brutal.
Yeah. A corporate training. Exactly right. It's not an academic class where you can ask questions and maybe learn something or challenge it if you want. You cannot challenge it. If you're in the audience of that, she's going to lecture you about environmental justice and you're going to STFU. Okay, but is it true that black people disproportionately make up DEI jobs? Well, according to the job site Zippia, it is not true. And in fact, most DEI officers are white people. Only 3% of them are black. More of them are Hispanic or Latino, but nearly 70 or 76% are white, or as ex-user Adam Coleman says, most of them are white, mediocre college graduates. Maybe that's a little bit racist.
So someone in the chat here, Lively Stones 777 says, why is Redacted always obsessed with talking shit about black people recently? Why?
I'm actually doing the opposite.
She's doing the opposite. I don't know if you're paying attention, Lively, but she's literally doing the opposite. She's basically saying that all these DEI people, black people aren't being fired by Trump. It's white people that are being...
What I'm trying to tell you is that black people have more use value than just jobs about race education and government jobs. And in fact, they have a diversity of jobs. I also would like to tell you that this idea that black people need the government handouts in order to succeed is racist. Black people are just as capable of everyone else of creating prosperity and education inside their own community. They don't need our sort of sniveling pity. And that's exactly what this is. Here is Maxine Waters saying that Trump viciously ordered all diversity and inclusion employees out of their office. They're on paid leaves. What she's saying here is that he's rolling back the civil rights era. That's falsely indicating that the Civil Rights Act is what helped black people survive because, white saviors came and helped them because they can't do it themselves. That's racist. In fact, the data shows that the rate of black poverty fell 87%. Fell from 87% to 47%, meaning they halved it from 1940 to 1960 before the Civil Rights Act, meaning they don't need your help. No racial group needs a handout to do it themselves. They are just as capable as any other racial group that has pulled themselves out of poverty. It mirrors the progress of second generation Jewish people, Irish people, Italians, Polish. So that's wrong. I'm saying it's wrong to paint them as these government dependents with no other skills other than race grifting.
Right.
Do you agree with that or don't you?
These are the same people that think they can't get IDs or have access to computers.
Right. Right. Exactly. Like AOC, these other people in Washington, they're like, if you put in ID laws, black people won't be able to figure it out. They won't be able to vote. They won't be able to do it. If you make it so that black people have to go and get an ID, then that's racist because they won't be able to figure it out. Shut up. That's racist.
Yeah.
That's it. What you're doing is that is racism. What you're doing is you're telling black people that they're too stupid to handle it.
Yeah.
And I think that data is fascinating.
And it's not me that's obsessed with it. She's like, yes, but you're using us as a punchline. No, I'm breaking down the headlines that are false.
Right now, the liberal media headlines are that Trump is firing black people and that what he's doing is racist and that what he is doing is a violation of the civil rights era, according to Maxine Waters. What he's doing is actually firing white people mostly, and it actually is not hurting black people at all. So again, the data going back, this is real data from before the Civil Rights Act, that black people in their own communities had lifted themselves out of poverty without the help of white people. They did it themselves. 87% down to 47%. Then the civil rights era comes along. And so everyone lays claim to the civil rights era as being the reason that they have pulled themselves out of poverty.
That's racist. They needed white politicians in order to do better. Okay, so why don't other groups?
I don't know if you're hearing me, but we're basically crapping on white people right now. Like we're crapping on all of on
this race grifting narrative.
Yes.
That paints minorities as it's the same way that this woman who lectured Trump from the pulpit says that, well, Latinos need your empathy because there are cleaners. That's racist. You don't paint people as somebody who is lower than you. And I'm not having it. So if you want to buy that, that's fine. The data does not back up the fact that black people will be disproportionately fired because of a DEI mandate. It's not true. Whatever you want to believe about black people's capableness, whatever you think they may need, okay, the data doesn't support that, but go ahead if you want to. And then pat yourself on the back for giving it to you and giving it to them and see how far that gets you.
Over the past 48 hours, thousands of illegal criminals have been busted by ICE agents and DEA agents and are being shipped back to their home countries. According to Town Hall, they put together a running list of criminals the White House has caught. And here are just a few highlights of who they've caught. A convicted child rapist who was somehow released by the Biden administration, a killer MS-13 gang member, a cocaine fentanyl carrying Honduran. You want these people in the United States. The White House also listed 9 illegal criminal immigrants who ICE recently captured in the United States. Each one was convicted of child rape, suspected ties to ISIS, aggravated homicide, murder with an active Interpol red notice, cocaine, fentanyl possession, sex offenders, vehicular manslaughter, or aggravated DUI. Here are just some of the example arrests here. Take a look at this. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has posted here. Pablo Benigno Calva Diamante, a Mexican national with 3 DUI convictions, faces removal after his arrest by the Denver office. So Denver actually is doing a lot over the past couple of days. On January 22nd, this criminal alien has already been removed from the United States twice. And then here's one in Buffalo. Take a look at this on your screen. Julio Cesar Diaz Martinez. Crimes? Oh, just sex trafficking and overstaying a visa. And not only that, illegally in the United States on top of that. So now ICE, you can follow ICE's X feed. It's actually pretty shocking as they're posting these different arrests with these different criminal records. And here are some of the ICE roundups. This is just in one 24-hour period. So they're publishing these statistics every day now. This was just the update for yesterday. 956 arrests, 554 detainers lodged. ICE single-day statistics with these enforcement updates. That's more in one day than the entire Biden administration. It's kind of it's absolutely shocking. But not everyone is happy about it, of course. Hollywood celebrities are sort of freaking out about it right now. And just reading liberal Twitter feeds, like if you happen to be over on the pedophile, if you guys, I don't know if any of you guys use the pedophile social network called Blue Sky. That's where all the pedophiles moved to after they were basically kicked off of X. It's basically a place for hangouts for liberals. But anyway, Selena Gomez, actress, posting this about all of these ICE raids. Watch.
I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry. All my people are getting attacked. Children.
Children? Children are being attacked?
I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something, but I can't. I don't know what to do. I'll try everything, I promise.
So let me get this straight. You're crying over all the criminals being arrested and deported. She says, oh, the children. Oh, the children. Where were these crocodile tears when 340,000 children went missing under the Biden administration? Like, where was her posts on social media about all of these children, the hundreds of thousands of little kids that are drugged by these drug cartel mules, bring them across the border. They're drugged in their arms with little stickers stuck on them, and they're sold off as sex slaves in the United States. Under the Biden administration, these children, the Biden administration has become the largest purveyor of sex traffickers in the world. The selling of these children, all done at the hands of the Department of Homeland Security under Alejandro Mayorkas, through these non-governmental organizations, these NGOs, and hundreds of thousands of children have been sold off into sex slavery and sex trafficking in the United States. And then, once they're used up, they're killed. Disgusting. So where were your crocodile tears when that was all happening? Because I didn't see it. I don't know if you guys saw it. Did you get in the chat room? Did you see Selena Gomez posting about all of the missing children under Biden? I sure didn't. So she's worried somehow that the children are being hurt in this. Really? Okay. They're being sold off in Guatemala and in Nicaragua and Venezuela, and they're being handed to drug mules and brought into the United States and being sold off. So if you're really concerned about them, maybe the fact that Trump is sending them back to their mothers or back to their families. Mel Gibson told us what was going on in Hollywood about all of this with all these pedophiles. And he was blacklisted for it, of course, you'll recall. So Tom Homan, the new border czar, was asked about this today, about these crocodile tears, and here's what he had to say.
I don't know if you've had a chance to see a video that has been going viral over the past hour or so. We're still working to clear it and show it. In fact, the Hollywood celebrity who posted it has now deleted it, I think because probably she faced a lot of backlash for it, noting even the New York Times and Fox News polls show that a majority of American respondents are in favor of deportations of criminals and gang members. She posted a video sobbing. She was crying in it. She said, all my people are getting attacked, with the picture of a Mexican flag. Again, she has now taken that down. But what do you say to those who are out there saying that these are everyday people, these are families that are being attacked and dragged out of their homes? How do you respond to that?
I don't think we arrested any families. We've arrested public safety threats and national security threats, bottom line. And look, President Trump won the election on this one issue, securing our border and saving lives. What happened on our southern border last 4 years is the biggest national security threat this country's seen, at least in my lifetime, because we got over 2 million known gotaways. We got a 600% increase in sex trafficking. We got a record number of terrorists crossing the border on the terrorist watch list. We have 250,000 Americans die from fentanyl coming across the open border. We're going to do this job, and we're going to enforce the laws of this country. If they don't like it, then go to Congress and change the law. We're going to do this operational apology. We're going to make our community safer. We're going to save. Once we lock that border on continuous operation, you're going to see fentanyl deaths decrease, illegal alien crime decrease, sex trafficking decrease. It's just all for the good of this nation, and we're going to keep going. No apologies. We're moving forward.
No apologies. We're moving forward. Tom Homan. And hopefully Tom will be a guest here on the show in the next few days. We're working on that.